supporter of stem cell research, both in Singapore and globally. She and her husband Deepak Sharma are in fact chairpersons of the Global Advisory Council of the International Society for Stem Cell Research, the ISSCR. Additionally, Susan and Deepak support the Susan Lim Outstanding Young Investigator Award that is administered by the ISSCR, and they wish to establish an eponymous award here in Singapore that similarly recognizes the exceptional achievements of an investigator in the early part of his or her independent career in stem cell research. To properly introduce this year's recipient, I would like to invite Dr. Huc Huy Ng, Executive Director of the Genome Institute of Singapore, as well as a former president of the Stem Cell Society of Singapore, to the stage to introduce Jonathan, who happens to be Huck's former PhD student. Thank you.
Actually, it shouldn't be my job to introduce Jonathan. So I received an email from Susan and Deepak, and they apologize that they cannot be here today to present the award to Jonathan. Instead, they asked me to present to introduce Jonathan on behalf of them. So I want to start by really acknowledging the strong support of Susan and Deepak for the society's efforts, as well as to start this award. And a bit of a short introduction of Jonathan. So Jonathan and I, we go a long way back. And he came to JS as a very proud student of JS and did very well. You know, if you want, I can tell you all sorts of stories about Jonathan in his younger days. Given that this is a very important award, so I'll try to refrain from telling all these stories. So he did really well at the Genome Institute of Singapore. He made some really outstanding contributions to the field of stem cell biology, to look at transcription regulatory circuitry, and thereafter he ventured out of Singapore and did his postdoc with Professor George Daly at Harvard Medical School. So, and again, within a very short time period at the Harvard Medical School, I think it was about three years, he managed to accomplish a lot in his research. He made some really interesting development in terms of technology in trying to reprogram cells using a drop of blood, and I think that got into the front cover of Cell Stem Cells. And thereafter, he returned to Singapore, and again, he did really well. He has almost gotten all the key awards in Singapore, the Young Scientist Award, the Singapore Youth Award, and more importantly, to acknowledge his contribution and to support his research, he's one of the A-star investigator. He got an A-star investigatorship. So he continued his great work in Singapore, and I'm really pleased to say that he's now the first awardee for this Susan Lim Outstanding Young Investigator Award. Please join me to congratulate Jonathan for this recognition. If you want to know more about his story, I can tell you later on.
Yes, congratulations, Jonathan. We are going to give you a proper plaque at some point, but now you have this really nicely done award. So I present to you the Dr. Susan Lim Outstanding Young Investigator Award. All right, take it away.
Thanks. I guess first and foremost, I would like to thank Dr. Susan Lim and Deepak for their generosity. I also like to thank Ray Dunn and the Stem Cell Society Singapore for these initiatives in recognizing young researchers working on stem cells. I thank Professor Ng Huc Huy. He's one of my nominators for this award. The other nominator being Professor Lim Sai Kiang. I thank them for their support. Obviously, I did my PhD with Huc So that was more than 10 years back. Unfortunately for him, I still leech on him for words of wisdoms and sound advice from time to time. So I couldn't ask for a better mentor than him. Well, at the start of this year, I received 2 letters from the government of Singapore. So one was to tell me and inform me that I'm enrolled for the Elder Shield program. So that means I reached a certain age. But the other letter was from the Ministry of Defense telling me that I'm no longer needed to be in the army. My obligations for national service was done. So I'm too old to fight, somewhat too young to die still. So as I was going through this sort of a mini, midlife crisis, trying to find my orientation, it's good to know that in the eye of the stem cell community, I'm still considered a young investigator. So I guess that's all about the stem cell research, right? Turning back the clock and stuff like that. Perhaps in the years to come, biological clock or biological age may not mean anything anymore.